Now, most people believe that NGOs, non-governmental organisations, exist to help people and to change lives and to drive positive change, all over the world. And governments and donors fund them with huge amounts of taxpayer money in return for their services. And these can be from distributing aid to consultation on how to use solar panels instead of oil in Africa, right? There's a huge range of things, including dance classes in China, sunglasses in Peru, that kind of thing. And the money is given in vast quantities, either in good faith or in a cynical ploy to undermine existing governments in foreign countries. And we know that, for instance, many governments, funnel aid into countries to support their vision of how a country should run, rather than how that country should run itself. They call it diplomacy, soft power. But really, it's a kick up the arse. It's money with kind of menaces. So really, the NGO industry is one of the biggest financial black holes that exists in the world today. And, a bit like a gigantic sink where you turn the tap on and the money just disappears into bureaucracy, high salaries, lobbying costs, consultancy, rather than reaching those in need at all or having any positive outcome. And did you know that anyone can set up an NGO, anyone at all? In fact, in India, it's such an excellent tax scam that there are over 2 million NGOs, which works out at one NGO for every 600 people. No, seriously. And worldwide, there's over 10 million NGO operations. And of course, many of these will be run fantastically well and provide good value for money, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about NGOs being unfair, because NGOs operate like very successful businesses, but with a tax loophole in that they don't pay any. And they are very often, not always, but they are very often scamming both the taxpayer and the people they claim to help. NGOs are not charities. Don't get them mixed up. They are not the same thing at all. NGOs are businesses that don't distribute profit. What I mean by that is they can still make massive amounts of money and get away with paying no tax on it because they don't have shareholders to disperse profit to. So typically an NGO will spend every single penny it raises on itself. It's why they pay such massive salaries. A private business couldn't and wouldn't ever do that. So for example, David Miliband, that's Mad Ed's brother, is the president and CEO of International Rescue Committee. And he gets paid a year $1 million. Now don't forget, this organization doesn't make anything. It doesn't sell anything. Its entire revenue stream comes from people and governments who are paying for goodness. Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're paying for good deeds. And his company, his NGO, International Rescue, has raised millions from various sources, but including government grants. And some NGOs spend millions and millions on salaries, marketing, lobbying, administrative costs like traveling all over the world in business class and staying in fabulous hotels. You get the picture, right? All while receiving government money with little oversight, because governments don't always have the ability to check their expenditure on themselves, and they often don't even get a positive outcome from the projects that we've funded anyway. Now, NGOs can be split into two main categories. You've got the operational NGOs, and they claim to provide direct aid. So, for example, disaster relief, medical care, food programs, that kind of thing. Then you've got advocacy NGOs. Now, these guys do things you can't really quite quantify, and certainly you can't measure, like they lobby governments, they influence policy, for example, pushing net zero laws or climate treaties on migration, that kind of stuff. And government advisors even. They can also work for NGOs. Now, both types of these businesses, because I am going to call them businesses, receive huge amounts of taxpayer money, and they operate with little transparency. So let's look at a couple of examples. So in 2010, I know we're going back a bit, but it's an important one. There was a catastrophic earthquake that killed 200,000 people in Haiti. And the US government alone pledged $1.3 billion in aid, and the UK provided about 157 million through government aid. NGOs and some charities also contributed to that. But only 0.9% of the money set aside for infrastructure from the US ever reached Haiti at all. Instead, most of it stayed in the US, going to private contractors and consultants. And no one knows where it went. And today, Haiti has still not been rebuilt. Millions live in tents. Some don't even have running water. In fact, it still looks exactly like a war zone or like a place where there's been a massive earthquake. So where did the money go? Where is the audit? Who got rich from their suffering? I don't know. Someone did. And then there's the Red Cross. What we do know is that the Red Cross raised $500 million for Haiti relief efforts. That's a lot of money, right? To go on building new homes. And they built 6. They just built 6. And Haiti isn't an isolated incident, because across disaster zones, NGOs rake in billions in donations and government grants, and conditions barely improve where they've been. Now, that's not to say it's always the NGO's fault, because sometimes there's a huge amount of corruption on the ground, fraud happens, they're in war zones. Do you know, I get that. I do get that some of the conditions that these NGOs work in are very hard. But I'll just go back to the Red Cross. They raised $500 million and they built 6 houses. Just saying. And back to David Miliband again. His NGO, International Rescue, had to rescue itself at significant legal cost from funds that had been donated to it to settle a lawsuit after it was accused of fraud related to US AID funds. These were programs during the Syrian conflict, and the allegations included collusion, bid rigging, accepting kickbacks, which led to inflated costs billed to the US government to taxpayers. And then that settlement was paid by money raised for international rescue in the first place. Businesses can't really do that. No, can't really do that. Then let's look at the biggest growth sector within NGOs, because this is the one that people are talking about in the news all the time. The NGO industry has really developed into advocacy NGOs. And this is the stiffing of taxpayers rather than the people who the money's going to. So what advocacy NGOs use the taxpayer money for is to lobby governments for policies that benefit their own agenda. So they might lobby to, I don't know, give dance classes in China. We literally have done that, you know. Anyway, they might lobby for that, and then the government gives them that money, and they either do the dance classes or they don't. Who would know? Who would know if only 2 kids turned up to a dance class? You wouldn't know, would you? And then, of course, we can take the example of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, which has been funded with millions and millions in government grants and, of course, from private donations. I'm not suggesting it only comes from our government's grants. No, governments all over the world give this institution money for Tony Blair to push his vision of a societal future. And it claims to focus on good governance and climate change policies. And, the foundation's done incredibly well for itself, because in 2023, even though it had in its books a $2.2 million financial loss, one of those directors received a salary of £1.26 million. That's nice. Imagine losing £2.2 million and still collecting a £1.26 million salary. Weird. And by 2023, it employed almost 800 people, all trying to change government policies, including in Africa and in the Middle East. Because, of course, Tony is good and virtuous, and his way is the only way to run a country. Behind the scenes, though, Tony's foundation is providing advice services to authoritarian regimes while virtue signaling to us about democracy and saving the planet. And his personal net worth in 2011, when he left office, was kind of modest. We don't pay prime ministers particularly well. But the NGO business he set up has been really good to him, because now he's worth an estimated $60 million. And of course, that could have come from after dinner speaking. I'm not saying it didn't. Could have come from selling property. I'm not saying it didn't. What I'm saying is that his foundation has done fantastically well. Now, I have absolutely no problem with wealth creation by wealth creators. In fact, I cheer them on. I love it. I do, however, have a massive problem with wealth takers. For me, NGOs take other people's wealth by selling goodness, and sometimes they make themselves very rich without actually showing any profit at all. Genius. It's completely genius. One moment. Isabel, set up an NGO. It's easy. Anyone can do it. And then, of course, there's the king and queen of all NGOs. No, really. This is what any self-respecting NGO should be aiming for. Because this not-for-profit business, which it doesn't make any profit at all, and so it pays no federal taxes, has assets of over $300 million. Well done. Bravo. The Hillary and Bill Clinton Foundation. It's absolutely fabulous. Yep. The Clintons raised their money, of course, during the time they were very active in government. Some of it whilst Hillary was Secretary of State. There was absolutely no payment for access at all. None. And emails from the foundation staff suggesting that Chelsea Clinton's husband, Mark, might have used foundation contacts to benefit his hedge fund. They're just spiteful. And the reports that Bill Clinton used taxpayer funds to subsidize his foundation activities and private email support are, of course, just rumors. It's all totally above board. So with $300 million in assets, what does the Clinton Foundation actually do all day then? Well, it says it develops leaders and accelerates solutions to global challenges and blah, 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 climate crisis. Speaking of the climate crisis, well now, that's an excellent NGO opportunity, and they are nearly all at it. It's a perfect cover for a money-making machine. So NGOs that once focused on disaster relief or advocacy have now shifted into climate change and sustainability, allowing them far more access to far more government grants, which you have to apply for. One of those is Climate Earth. This is a big NGO in the UK, and it's funded from private sources, and yes, it gets UK government money, which is hard tax money. But get this, because this is completely bonkers. It receives funding from government grants and foundations, and then it uses money to sue the government over environmental policies that it doesn't think the government has done very well. Let's say that again, just so we all understand this grift. Okay, it receives millions in taxpayer-funded grants from the UK government, but then it sues the same UK government over environmental policies. Wow, That's like paying someone to beat you up. Anyway, these maniacs sue the government repeatedly, including over net zero, and they repeatedly win. So not only are they using your money against you, they are then making net zero policy punishments even harder. Allegedly. So apart from suing the UK government with your money for your government not beating you up hard enough, some money, well, about 24 million of it, they received in 2024. And this is to, I'll read it, increase legal capacity for protecting forests in Africa. I think that means they're going to help African governments write their own laws. Seriously? The British public is paying for that? And these aren't isolated incidents. It's happening day in and day out, and it's happening with our money. NGOs have successfully positioned themselves as above criticism because they claim they're helping people, when the reality is often these recipients barely see any of the money. Taxpayers are unknowingly funding activist groups, and it appears our government is giving money to companies, and then those companies are suing them. After Elon started to pull apart the US government spending figures, eyes are all over the UK Foreign Aid Department, from diversity programs in villages far, far away to dance lessons in China. It's all there and it's all coming out. And as it does, we'll discuss them. But for now, I just want you to ask more questions about where taxpayer money is really going, whether NGOs should be allowed to function like unaccountable tax-exempt businesses when they are clearly receiving substantial funds from taxpayers. And I would argue it is profit. And what's happening is unfair and in some instances, totally mental. And my final thought, until next time, is when you hear an NGO demanding more funding, when you hear those activists, ask yourself, is this actually going to anybody in need at all? Or is it just a circular economy? You pay them, they pay their bills, you pay them, they pay their bills. Can you see it? Anyway, that's what I think of NGOs. I think there are too many. I think it's a massive tax loophole. I think they should be treated like any other business. They should be able to make profit and then pay tax on that profit, because currently they are contributing nothing to Britain. That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. See you next time.